Hi everyone, this is Stan, your favorite Polish Taiwan YouTuber. Hope you're all having a great day. Welcome to today's show. Today let's talk about the white paper revolution that's going on in China right now. Xi Jinping is scared of white paper. A man who concentrated all the political and military power in his hands, an emperor for life, is scared of a piece of paper. The CCP's regime likes saying that they are serving the people, but it's the people who are they are most scared of. A single phrase, Xi Jinping Step Down, said by the protesters, made Emperor Xi on pins and needles. What did he do when the protest outburst? He censored internet speech and, as always, said that the protesters have been incited by the foreign forces. Is he talking about Marx and Engels here? It actually is not me saying that. Some of the protesters used the same argument while discussing the so-called foreign forces.
我刚刚收到消息，让大家要注意的是，现在在我们的群众当中有境外反华势力，在我们的周围。您这边请。 我要中国人民！境外，你说的境外势力是马克思和恩格斯吗？
有些这是吃饱了没事干的外国人呢。
The state apparatus started working to force the protesters into submission. And, as usual, the CCP didn't care about the righteous anger of the Chinese people. Starting from Hong Kong's anti-extradition protests, the level of disapproval of the Chinese government and Xi Jinping personally by the Chinese people has only been rising. You can see a trend here. Starting in 2020, the massive lockdowns have been imposed in places where the anti-government protests took place. And along with the lockdowns came more internet speech restrictions. But all of those high-tech control measures didn't make the Chinese people give up. The CCP's government didn't manage to force people into submission. Quite the contrary. All the government's restrictions forced the people to no longer tolerate the government. Right now, the whole Chinese society is like a powder keg. Any further event of the Chinese government's violations of human rights and just any other event of injustice might lead to mass protests erupting all across China. Let's recall the recent events that show us the brutality of the Chinese government. Lockdowns in Shanghai, when some people were starved to death, actually. Dr. Li Wenliang's vigil, he was a whistleblower who tried to spread the information about the pandemic in China. Or when CCP's Zhang Gaoli allegedly assaulted the tennis player Peng Shuai. No investigation into Zhang Gaoli's behavior was conducted, and Peng Shuai actually disappeared from the public for a very long time. Also, the chain woman in Xuzhou, beatings in Tangshan, Chinese banks being involved in scam schemes in Henan. Talking about those schemes, people couldn't take their money from the state-run banks, and if they tried to go to the bank itself, they received red COVID QR code, meaning they were forced into lockdowns. Also, how the brave bridgeman got arrested, or even the recent exodus of Foxconn workers. All of these events, some are related to Xi's zero-COVID policies, some are just what the CCP does on a daily basis. All of these events resulted into protests. And right now, we see the new wave, the largest one to this time, the white paper revolution. The patience of the Chinese people is almost over, and the anger is reaching its critical point. Everyone understands that the CCP never really had serving the people as the goal of their existence. For the CCP, the people whom they're serving is just the top-level party officials. Your usual Chinese people are just a property for those elites. It's a very unpleasant truth, but many Chinese people know it. But with a terrible situation like that, the people in China haven't been resisting the government actively for a very long time. The only thing the people asked for was just to have enough food, have a job to feed the family. They didn't demand political freedoms or rights to hold elections for more than 30 years already, and only have been asking for mere means of survival. But when Xi Jinping came into power, even those basics that the Chinese people had were taken away. And this time, the Chinese people became very angry. CCP, how dare you take all those rights from the Chinese people? Who gave you the authority? You deprived the people of their freedom of speech, you brainwashed them, you controlled everything they say online, and people did not oppose that actively. But now, you're starving them to death. And the people couldn't just let it happen. You wanted to starve the people to death, make them poor, close them in their apartments till they all just died out. When one has nothing to lose, when you even lose your freedom to lie flat, then why should they keep on obeying the CCP's orders? For Xi Jinping, it's a question if he stays in power, and for the Chinese people, it's a matter of survival already. I received many calls from the Chinese people during my livestream yesterday, even though many of them sounded pessimistic about the future of the protests, but at the same time, they saw hope for the better future of China in those protests, and called me during the livestream to bravely speak out about what they think about the human rights situation in China. At the same time, hoping to spread the word further, I want to give some words of encouragement to the Chinese people both inside the Great Wall and outside of it. Don't be disheartened even though you might not succeed at the first time. If we look at the future of China, those protests can become the beginning of a totalitarian country slowly changing for the better. And no matter how Xi Jinping strengthens his control measures over the population, it will only lead to further protest and further disapproval by the Chinese people of the totalitarian government, meaning that the CCP's oppression will not silence the will of the Chinese people. What Xi Jinping is doing is wrong to its core. Cracking down on the protest will only lead to a new wave of disagreement and the new rallies against the government. The only right thing to do is talk to the people and fulfill the demands they put forward. Only like that can he prevent the protests from growing. What a smart dictator would have done: make the people less willing to protest, let them waste the potential for further protests, and maybe in future go after some of the most prominent protesters. But that's what smart dictators do. But she's not smart. And for as long as he is in power, the voice of the disagreement won't be silenced. In the end, I want to give you an example of the Gdańsk shipyard and the Solidarity Union. The Polish movement that led to the end of the communist rule in the country didn't succeed on the first day of its establishment. People spent more than 10 years to succeed. And there have been many protests and events during those years. I also think that the CCP is not as powerful as they want to portray themselves. Polish communist authorities also had their party apparatus that had been putting the people into submission for years and years. But they didn't prevail. And the CCP's regime, just as the communist regimes in Poland, Czechia, Lithuania, Ukraine and other countries, will fall one day. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please press like, subscribe and share. This is Stan. I see you in the next one. Bye bye.